Hello, everybody. How are you? And welcome to Shadow at Night for Monday, June the 30th, 2025. You know, it's interesting how rumors get around. I recently got a message, and when I say recently, I'm talking about like an hour ago, from a woman. I think she was from Orillia, Ontario. And she said, Shadow, I've heard a rumor that you're quitting. Is that true? And one of the little emoji worried faces. And I said, where'd you hear that? And she said, well, people were talking in one of the groups I belong to on Facebook. And I said, what were they saying exactly? Shadow's quitting. He's going to quit. I said, do you remember who posted that? She goes, I can't remember who it was exactly. Do you know where it came from? Maybe the source? And this is something that I always ask you guys to do before you share anything or retweet anything or, you know, move information along. Make sure of the source and make sure it's accurate, because no, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting the show. The show will go on for as long as I can do it. So, having said that, I do have a couple of big things I want to announce. And before I get to this, and those big things are good news. Well, one of them is extremely good news. The other one is like kind of nail-biting good news, but it's still good news. There's a personal matter that I need looked into. I know this is odd because I don't normally do this on the show, but I'm making an exception tonight. Do I have anybody watching this show on any of the platforms, whether it's Facebook, and we did make it to Facebook tonight. I was very concerned we wouldn't make it. I even made a post saying the show will not be on Facebook tonight because earlier today there were connectivity issues with Facebook. I could not get a connection with Facebook to air anything. And then about 7:45, miraculously, it went. So here we are on Facebook as well. I totally didn't plan on being on Facebook tonight, but here we are. So excellent. Do we have anybody who is watching from the Stonewall, Manitoba area? And if you are, that's awesome. Thank you. The other thing I have to ask is, are you okay to drive a vehicle right now? I know that many people took today off. Tomorrow's the holiday. Tomorrow's the stat holiday. So it's a 4-day weekend for a lot of people. And because of that, you know, booze is going to be flowing, right? I get it. But I need somebody in the Stonewall area who has not been drinking, who can drive a car, to do me a favor. So please message me or email me, shadowdavis@gmail.com, or message me on Facebook, or put it up in the comments. And I'm going to ask you to take a spin down Highway 67 for me, east, just to see if something is there. I don't want to go into great detail about it yet, but there's that. These two big announcements are coming up in just a second. The Shadow at Night live stream, as always, is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Comparing Crest toothpaste to SilverCeuticals toothpaste. First, we're starting out with Crest. It's a classic, it's an original. It's what I've used most of my life. But that being said, it does have its problems. First off, the consistency is so weird and thick, and I get it's a paste, but it really doesn't spread that well. And I must also say that I'm not in love with the taste. I get toothpaste isn't supposed to taste good, but why shouldn't it? But that being said, it does get the job done. Next, we have SilverCeuticals. They have 3 flavors, but today we're going with Bubbleberry. And already it smells so good. So I'm excited to see what this tastes like. The consistency is also a lot smoother, and I must say it spreads way nicer in your mouth.
This literally tastes like fruit bubblegum.
Yeah, this toothpaste was pretty good. I actually went in for seconds, and it's infused with nano silver, so it helps remineralize your teeth and keep them fresh throughout the day.
100% go with SilverCeuticals.
And here's the results. What's your favorite toothpaste?
CanadaNanoSilver.com. CanadaNanoSilver.com, 204-808-9292 if you want to get in touch with Kevin and Anna via phone. You can also hit the contact tab on the website. It's in the upper right-hand corner on the front page. That will email them. Ask them whatever you want to ask them. If you want to be a retailer of these awesome products, if you want to buy some of these awesome products, if you think you're going to turn blue from these awesome products. All of the information, by the way, is available on the website for anything. All of the scientific testing, all of the products, what they can do, what they won't do. CanadaNanoSilver.com. People are curious. What the hell? Why do you need somebody from Stonewall? And I'm noticing you guys are very quiet tonight in the comments. That's interesting. Michael is watching tonight on probably all of the platforms. Hello, Michael. How are you? Cheryl is watching tonight. Janet Azizi is watching from London, Ontario. Carla in Calgary. Hello, Debbie watching in Arborg on YouTube. Hello, Wayne and Patty watching in Norwich, Ontario. Larry is watching in Facebook, on Facebook. From the 51st state, somewhere in the 51st state. Kathy is watching tonight from Ontario. Hello, Claude K7 and Deb from Calgary. Cheryl, Debbie, Brenda. All right, I don't see anybody from Stonewall yet, but if there is somebody from Stonewall, I'm going to need you guys to message me. Okay, here's announcement number one. Announcement number one. I saw this posted earlier by somebody, and I went, that seems interesting. And so I went right to the source, because that's what we do, right? And I got a hold of Betty Carbert. Betty is, of course, Chris Carbert's mom. Chris is being held in Drumheller, Alberta. Chris, of course, one of the Coots Four. You guys know Chris by now. He's being released. Chris Carbert is being released. He has an appeal into the courts. So this is a bail situation. It's not a parole situation. It's a bail situation. And I spoke to Betty and I said, Betty, am I seeing things, or has Chris been granted parole? She said, hello, he's been granted bail, but the Crown and Chris's lawyer have to iron out the conditions still. He probably won't actually get out before Friday. He's getting out this week sometime. So this is awesome. And she says to me here, thank you for reaching out. Chris can't wait to talk to as many podcasters as he can. As long as he's not breaching conditions. Oh, Eddie. Hi, Eddie. How are you? Eddie, are you going to go up 67 for me? If you are, I need you to look for a car, a white car that's missing a wheel. A white car that's missing a wheel, and it'll be pointed towards Stonewall, pointed west. I know it seems kind of an odd thing, but there it is. Here is the other piece of news that I have for you guys here. Now, you probably can't see that. I can't see it too well either, but Universal Ostrich Farm was notified today that they'll be going to the Appeal Court of Canada. Let me get that off. The Appeal Court of Canada in Ottawa, July 15th, for a one-day hearing. So Katie and Karen are going to be heading to Ottawa July the 15th for their one-day hearing. This is the Appeal Court of Canada. I posted this on my Facebook page, so you guys, if you're in the Ottawa area and you want to go and show support, meet Katie and Karen. Karen is Katie's mom and the co-owner of Universal Ostrich Farm. You can go and look on my Facebook page for all of the information. It's in that little thing I tried to show you guys there, but, didn't show up too well. All right. So let's get to business here. To be honest, I wasn't planning on doing a show tonight because it's been a crazy weekend. It's like, not from a wild, drunken standpoint. Just it's a couple of things have happened that I'm kind of going, I could have died. But anyway, here I am. So this is going to be a very informal T-shirt tonight, right? Try to wear a red. Canada Day tomorrow. Let's support the country while it's still a country, technically speaking. So Mark Carney, Prime Minister, capitulates. Here's what happened, you guys. I'm going to go right back to the beginning. On Friday, Donald Trump posted this on his Truth Social. I did a video on this, a minor video on Saturday it was. So here's what Donald Trump said on Friday. We've just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact that they've charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs for years on dairy products, has just announced that they're putting a digital services tax on our American technologies companies, which is a direct, blatant attack on our country. They're obviously copying the European Union, and yes, they absolutely are, because Carney made a deal with them last week. And what do you think that deal includes? You have to include this tax, you have to include this policy, this policy, this policy. We need to be in alignment, Ursula von der Leyen probably said to Carney, and he said, yeah, sure, that sounds great. Europe? Absolutely. Can we become part of the EU? Technically, no. But who knows? Maybe we can bend the rules for Canada. Anyway, Trump says they're obviously copying the European Union, which has done the same thing, this digital services tax. and is currently under discussion with us also. Based on this egregious tax, we're hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada, effective immediately. We will let Canada know the tariff they'll be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. Thank you for your attention on this matter. So Donald Trump was on with Maria Bartiromo, I think her name, Bartiromo, on Fox News yesterday morning. But here's Mark Carney earlier today talking about rescinding that digital services tax. As you can see, it's right here. From the Government of Canada, Canada rescinds digital services tax to advance broader trade negotiations with the United States. Here's Mark Carney.
A good conversation with President Trump, and we agreed to recommence our negotiations with a view to the 21st of July deadline that we had agreed in. Kananaskis, Minister Champagne and LeBlanc had conversations with their counterparts as well. We've restarted the discussions this morning.
Did you get anything in exchange for?
We have, to be clear, it's part of a bigger negotiation. It's something that we expected in the broader sense that would be part of a final deal. We're making progress towards a final deal. There's more to be done, to be clear. And as I just said, which answers the translation question, as I just said, is a question of timing in terms of the date for the final negotiations and when the tax was coming into effect. And it doesn't make sense to collect tax from people and then remit them back. So it provides some certainty. And as I just said, the negotiations have restarted. We're going to focus on getting the best deal for Canadians. We're making progress. There's more to do, and we'll keep you updated.
The White House says you caved. Is that how it went down? Why pause it and not?
The White House says you caved. Is that the way it went down, sir? Okay. So I'm just trying to roll out the sequence of events for you guys here so we can all understand it, right? So Friday, Trump announces that trade negotiations have absolutely stopped. And then within 7 days, Canada's going to find out how much of a tariff we're going to have to pay to do business with the United States. This is not good news because it could be, what was he saying? 400%? Well, let's listen to Donald Trump. He's on with Maria Bartiromo on Fox News yesterday morning. And remember that Carney announcement, that clip that we just saw, didn't happen until this morning. And Canada's capitulation in terms of removing this digital sales tax didn't happen until yesterday afternoon. So again, here is Trump yesterday morning on Fox News.
You said you're stopping all trade discussions with Canada?
Until such time as they drop certain taxes, yeah.
The digital
People don't realize Canada is very nasty to deal with. They've charged our farmers up to 400%, almost 400% on certain products and certain, things our farmers want to send in. They have to pay 200, 300, 400%. People don't know that. Canada is a very tough country to deal with. I will say that. And I love Canada.
You have USMCA in place.
I know, but
you'll have to deal with them.
But USMCA is no good if they cheat.
What does that mean?
Well, there's been things going on that we don't like, and things going on where they took advantage. And hopefully we'll be fine with Canada. I love Canada. Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state. Okay, It really should, because Canada relies entirely on the United States. We don't rely on Canada.
So he brought back the old chestnut of 51st state. Now, we know that Canada cannot just become the 51st state. If anything happens like that, it's going to be Alberta, Saskatchewan, Quebec, whichever. It's going to be province by province, maybe even municipality by municipality, but it will not be Canada as a whole. That's never going to happen. That's what Mark Carney based his entire campaign on, and he sucked in the elbows up crowd. Elbows up. Remember that embarrassing video outside of a Carney rally? I think it was in Ottawa, and I think it was Right Blend, maybe Chris Dacey, who took that video, where there was all these people standing there doing that bird dance. It looked like elbows up, elbow. I wish I'd thought to get that video, but I really probably subconsciously stopped myself from doing it because I don't think I could stomach it. And I thought maybe you'd probably feel the same way. But what do they think now that Mark Carney keeps knuckling under to Donald Trump. Anytime Trump says, no, I'm sorry, but that's off the table now, unless you, Carney does the unless you thing, whatever that happens to be. The latest one is the digital services tax, which, by the way, was going to be retroactive to 2022. So he would have charged all of the big tech companies, all of the companies that do business digitally, right? Any company that does business digitally, Walmart, Amazon, Facebook, Google, any company. Now, you might be sitting there saying, well, it's good. They should pay their fair share of taxes. And I agree. Of course they should. But an extra tax? Because we're the ones who'd be paying it, ultimately. We're the ones. It always trickles down to the consumer. And we are the consumer. So guess what? Rates would go up for whatever you happen to subscribe to on TV, Netflix, all of that stuff. You'd have to pay a little bit more for Amazon deliveries. You'd have to pay a little bit more for those companies that DoorDash, all of those other ones. Yeah, it's true. So Carney has capitulated on this now. And don't think for 1 second the United States isn't going to gloat about it. Here's Caroline Levitt.
Mr. Carney in Canada caved to President Trump in the United States of America. And President Trump knows how to negotiate, and he knows that he is governing the best country and the best economy in this world, on this planet. And every country on the planet needs to have good trade relationships with the United States. And it was a mistake for Canada to vow to implement that tax that would have hurt our tech companies here in the United States. The president made his position quite clear to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister called the president last night to let the president know that he would be dropping that tax, which is a big victory for our tech companies and our American workers here at home.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. I mean, not too much of a gloat. Just enough. Just enough to let us know that we are absolutely subservient to the United States. That's fine. I mean, that's the way it's always been. You can't. Now, I know there's a lot of people who struggle with this, and they say, oh, it's all part of the greater plan. And that might be, too. I mean, this might be part of the greater plan to bring all of the North American countries together so it's easier to implement this, that, and the other in terms of the New World Order. Right. I get it. But for now, we're still our own country, such as it is. And there's people who think, well, I wish Carney had more of a spine. It's kind of a tough situation because politically you want the guy to fail. You want him to tank. You want him to do the worst job possible. But at the same time, he's still the Prime Minister of Canada. We are Canadians and we want our country to thrive, right? So it kind of puts you between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, on the other hand, it's kind of a tough thing. By the way, are you going to be celebrating Canada Day tomorrow? You got to go out, watch fireworks, wave a flag, paint your face? Any of that stuff? There's a big Alberta Day event tomorrow at the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. Yeah, Chris Scott's putting it on tomorrow. And guess who's going to be there? Christine Anderson. We're going to hear from her later on in the show. Donald Trump. What kind of a guy is Donald Trump? What kind of a guy do you think Donald Trump is? I've got my own opinion about the guy, but what do you think? And I'm talking about personally now. I'm not talking about whether or not he's a puppet of the Jesuits or all of that stuff. Just as a personal, what do you guys think? You think he's a decent fella? Yeah, Monica, you know what? That could be. Monica's saying that Carney is the prime minister by fake ballots, and that could be. We're never going to get to the bottom of it in Canada. It's never going to happen in Canada. I wish I could say. Arrogant, you say, Audrey. Sophie says, I like Donnie, but he can annoy me. Yeah. He's a bit of an asshole, but he's a successful asshole, Michelle says. I believe he's honest. He puts his country first, Judy says. Tracy says, we like him. Great hard ass. Don't see any of that in Canada. Decent leader that puts his citizens first. All right, John Rich is a great big country star. And he's got an interesting story about Donald Trump. Watch this.
There, and everybody's eating their food, and President Trump is not president at this time, and he's talking to the senators and talking about really important stuff, and I'm just minding my own business going, I don't know how I got in this room. Well, okay. I'm sitting elbow to elbow with him. It's about an hour into dinner. I hadn't said a word, just been listening. And Trump gets through eating, and you've seen him do this move right here. Yeah. Wherever in the big boardroom he does this. Okay, that's what he does. He goes, can I ask you a question, John Rich? He never calls me John. John Rich? I look at him, I go, yes, sir. What's the question? He goes, well, you do a lot of big shows. Like, you're an entertainer? Yes, sir. You play for really big crowds? I go, I do. I play for really big crowds for a long time. He goes, well, have you seen these rallies I'm doing? Like, it's 30, 40,000 people. I said, yeah, it's unbelievable. He goes, so here's the question. Why are people booing me at my rallies when I bring up the vaccine? Mm. This is the question from the President of the United States. A guy who is very proud at that moment of the fact that he was able to stomp the gas pedal and get that thing out because he's under the impression this is going to fix the problem.
Operation Warp Speed.
That's it. Yeah. Okay, so here's a guy who, to his own admission, one of the biggest egos on the earth. Yeah. And he's very proud of this. And I respect him to, there is no limit.
You're right.
But I'm being asked a very direct question. And so, man, I looked at him and I said, okay, I'm going to tell you the answer and you're not going to like it. He goes, okay, what's the answer? You're going to look at me like this? I said, let me start off by saying this. We, the American people, do not trust the people that you were forced to trust at the time when this was happening. Let's start there. And I said, by the people we don't trust, here's who I mean. The FDA, the CDC, the NIH, the WHO, Fauci, and all the rest of them. I said, Mr. President, we consider them to be a bunch of murderous, depopulationist psychopaths.
And his reaction was...
That's a good way to start.
His eyes are... He goes... Unbelievable. Unbelievable. He's stunned. No, he is stunned that I said that. I said, now, let me tell you why they're booing you. I said, because all of them, including me, I said, I would boo you. I would boo you.
You really did not.
I would boo you.
Really?
If you brought that up, and here's why. And he's looking at me, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the last time this guy's going to invite me to anything.
Yeah.
He's never going to call me again. I'm throwing massive shade on a former president's, in his mind, one of his biggest accomplishments. Mm-hmm. And it dawned on me, nobody had told the man what I was telling him right now, because they all work for him. They all got something to gain from him. Yes, they're not going to tell him this because they're not serving him well. I don't work for him. And I think a lot of him, and I want him to understand the truth about it. So I said, here's the problem. Here's why they're booing you, Mr. President, because every human being out in that rally, either themselves or they know someone directly who has been harmed by the vaccine or has even died from it, including me. I said, I got members of my own family who were forced to take it against their will to keep their jobs, and now they've got all kinds of problems. Big problems, heart problems, lung problems. And he's looking at me, and he looks around the table and he goes, this is unbelievable. I mean, he goes, has anyone else heard this? Herschel Walker, he was running for Senate at the time. He goes, Mr. President, I mean, down in Georgia, my constituents come up at my rallies, and what John just said, man, I hear it every single day. Looks over at Marcia. Marcia's sitting there going, you know, looks around the table, and then Lindsey Graham, who's sitting across. So you're here, or I'm here. I'm sorry, but you're Lindsey Graham.
Sorry, you're Lindsey. Sorry, Lindsey, everybody.
Okay, you're Lindsey Graham, and you're me. Okay. As I'm going into the part where I said, even in my own family, I have Lindsey Graham busts in with it swishing his Chardonnay around and said, Mr. President, if you listen to conspiracy theorists like John Rich, the Democrats are going to take credit for what you did, and they're going to beat you in the next election with it. So I'm looking at Trump, And he's sitting over there and he does that. And I looked at him and I said, do not interrupt me when I'm speaking. Do you understand me?
You what?
And he looked at me and he goes, well, I didn't mean to disrespect you. I go, yeah, but you did.
Oh.
So,
Right now, you look like Wyatt Earp. And it's very intimidating.
Trump is right here. You're Lindsey Graham, okay? I'm holding him.
Oh, good. Yeah. You're Lindsey Graham.
I look back up at the president. I look at him one more time. I go, now let me finish what I was saying.
Oh, man.
And then I finished it. Okay.
That.
Trump ended that by saying, so I guess no more vaccine talk. I said, I think that's a good idea. I said, I think you're going to learn a lot about it. But yes, I think that's a good idea because that's the only thing that would make us ever boo you, Mr.
Yeah, because
President.
you're right. I mean, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people didn't agree with him on, and it was the vaccine and him being proud of it. And Jason actually has a story that's similar to that.
Well, the thing about Trump and the vaccine, Trump never mandated the vaccine.
No, exactly.
Trump said, you're all the doctors, go figure out how to make this stop.
We need to make this available.
And he trusted these people that we now all know are a bunch of depopulationist animals. We all know that now, but he never mandated it because mandating an experimental medical procedure violates the Nuremberg Code. It's a crime against humanity, which I hope we see that play out because people need to be held accountable for that in a major way. I think it will.
Yeah.
So that was the story there. So, again, he has called me since then. He does text me back from the Super Bowl. He has invited me to, so I did not lose my friendship with him. I think if anything, based on a couple of things he's asked me over the last year or so, he probably appreciates the fact that I'll say something to him that he don't really want to hear that.
That's an interesting story, don't you think? It's always nice to know that somebody in a position high up there. I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about a guy like John Rich. I mean, John Rich, big star, right? He plays in front of crowds of 15, 20,000 people, a lot of big hits, a lot of money. And he's one of us. I had a conversation. You know what? I should write a book. Conversations with Normies. I had another conversation with a normie this past weekend, and oh man, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. As I was talking to her, I said, you do understand that the Liberal government has got an EV mandate in place, right? She goes, what's EV? Well, it's electric vehicles, and by 2035, you won't be able to buy a gas-powered vehicle in this country. Oh, shut up. And this is, as you guys know, this is like scratching the surface. It's not even scratching the surface of the big deal. That's just what Carney's doing. It's part of it, yeah, but it's like this minor thing. And she said, get out of here. There's no way. They can't do that. Well, they're doing it. Go look it up. I don't have to. I said, do you think that now I've known this person for 40 years. Do you think I'm lying to you? That I've suddenly gone crazy? No. Well, then go look it up. And then we started talking about what's going on in public schools with this LGBT agenda. And we started talking about climate change. And we started talking about all that stuff. And you would not believe the resistance, the pushback that she threw up in my face. I'm like, and it was all very basic. It was the ABCs of all of the stuff we talk about. Page 1 of chapter 1 of a 20-chapter book, where you and I were on page 698, chapter 20. She hasn't even started reading the book yet. She doesn't even know the book exists. And I thought, oh my God, if this is the average normie, then we are in big, big, big trouble. Huge. We got to do better at waking these people up. So here's what I'm going to ask you guys. And I've got to maybe change my presentation a little bit too, to not be so critical of those folks so that we can bring them into our group. Because any little excuse they can find to not listen to me or any other independent broadcaster about the truth of things, they will take that. They'll go running right back to their left-wing corporate media masters and all their friends who will make them feel better. Oh, he's so mean. So I've got to find a way to soften my approach, and I think we all do. And once we can find a way to do that, maybe we could draw more people in just by showing them the news, like the left-wing corporate media stuff even. Like, that's how bad it is. This person is completely, like, I'm wondering, how can you live your life not knowing what's going on outside of your own little bubble? I find that amazing. Anyway, let's get back to Trump. And are these negotiations really going on? Because Mark Carney said in his clip, well, we had a phone call last night, and we're going to get back to negotiations and hopefully have some kind of deal in place by, what did he say, the end of this week? I think that's a little bit quick, Mark, considering that all negotiations were off the table 3 days ago. Maybe it's the middle of July. But from Axios, the story is U.S. will send tariff letters in the coming days. Deals not needed, Trump says. Now, I think we'd be foolish to think that Canada is not on that list. A looming deadline to make trade deals doesn't necessarily matter, President Trump said yesterday, because the U.S. will simply send letters to hundreds of countries assigning tariff rates. So we'll just arbitrarily decide. Angola gets 10%, Russia gets 10%, Canada gets 50%. If we've pissed them off in any way, I think the rate's going to be higher. Or it's probably going to be more like, well, he looks at the numbers. He sees what we're charging the U.S. in tariffs, and so he's just going to go ahead and charge us or any other country the same thing that we charge them. Fair's fair, after all. Why it matters. The pause on Trump's sweeping global tariffs expires in about 10 days with one deal and one temporary truce in hand, the rest of the world in varying states of limbo. What they're saying, we made deals, but I'd rather just send them a letter. This is Trump now. A very fair letter saying, congratulations. We're going to allow you to trade in the United States of America. You're going to pay a 25% tariff or a 20% or 40 or 50. I would rather do that, Trump said on Fox News. Sunday Morning Futures asked about extending the pause. Trump said, I don't think I'll need to. I could. There's no big deal. What I wanted to do is, what I will do just sometime prior to the 9th is we'll send a letter to all of these countries. How it works. I'm going to send letters. That's the end of the trade deal, Trump said, giving U.S. ally Japan as an example. Dear Mr. Japan, here's the story. You're going to pay a 25% tariff on your cars, he said. Trump said letters would go out pretty soon and that we don't have to meet. We understand. We have all the numbers. Trump made similar promises of unilateral tariff letters on May 16th, June 11th, saying both times that they'd be sent in 2 to 3 weeks. That didn't happen. When Trump paused the stiffest of the reciprocal tariffs in early April, officials promised they'd make 90 deals in 90 days before the pause expired. Both Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett have promised a flurry of deals as soon as this coming week. Similar past promises, though, didn't result in agreements. And on Friday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said trade deals could be wrapped up by Labor Day, a softening of the negotiation window. Financial markets have largely moved past the trade drama. U.S. stocks hit a new record on Friday. Yes, but Trump's promise to unilaterally assign tariff rates in the coming days could revive some of the uncertainty that caused markets to sink earlier this year. Carney and the EU will be amongst the victims, unless, of course, they can find a way to get exemptions. I think the UK has already got kind of a deal that works heavily in the United States' favor, but the EU is still way far away from any kind of deal because of their digital service tax. It's the same situation that Carney capitulated to, and will Ursula von der Leyen capitulate as well? We'll find out more about her in just a second. This is a great editorial piece from Western Standard I found earlier today, written by Dr. A.W. Barber. It says, Europe's man in Ottawa is no friend to the West. Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada is European. Western Canadians might take him at his word and check out. He says, I've got whiplash from the speed of this government's shifting allegiances. Canada's 45th Parliament opened May 26th. The next day, King Charles delivered the speech from the throne. Prime Minister Mark Carney had invited him, hoping the symbolism would rekindle a sense of unity, a patriotic gesture. Carney hoped it might blunt the growing separatist sentiment in Western Canada. It didn't work, but it made for a good photo op. Then within days, Carney undercut the whole thing. Speaking in Europe, he called Canada the most European of non-European countries. It was a slap in the face to the king and a telling slip from a prime minister who could clearly rather be Brussels adjacent than crown loyal. He may not even understand that the UK has traditionally kept its distance from Europe and is no longer part of the EU. The remark was not historical analysis, it was a wish. That wish became clearer when Canada signed on to the EU's Rearm Europe initiative. Last week, it happened last week. This isn't about military procurement, it's a membership fee. It signals the beginning of an EU plus arrangement for Canada, a one-way slide into the orbit of a failing European super-state. But what does it even mean to be European? Do the Spanish and Poles share a national identity? Are the Swedes and Greeks interchangeable? Europe is a geographic term. Calling it a cultural one is lazy. Enlightenment values are shared by the US, Israel, and Japan, none of which are European. If European means political system, Canada, like Australia and India, inherited its institutions from Westminster, UK. In fact, Carney's own rise to power was anything but European. After Justin Trudeau resigned, Carney took office without an election and quickly scrapped the carbon tax by decree, executive action that looked more like Washington than Brussels. Carney is hard to pin down. British-born, Europe-minded, a former governor of the Bank of England, a citizen of the world, maybe, but hardly a man of Canada. Doctor says, when I was a boy in Ontario in the 1950s, public schools taught our British heritage proudly. Historian David Starkey once called Canada the eldest daughter of the empire. But under Trudeau, Canada lost that sense of self. Trudeau even said we had no core identity. Apparently, that means we can now be anything. One day, loyal to the crown, the next, a Brussels satellite, just like our prime minister. Sometimes British, sometimes European, sometimes American, but never really Canadian. If Carney was trying to stem Western alienation, he's only poured fuel on the fire. The West wants out, not because it hates Canada, but because it's being pushed out. Ottawa's heavy hand is already intolerable. Imagine how much worse it would be if those bureaucrats were taking orders from unelected technocrats in Brussels. What would that look like? Think Germany. Farmer revolts, economic stagnation, smothering environmental rules imposed from above. That's the Europe Carney seems eager to emulate, and that's the Canada he's pushing on the West. In truth, the West isn't leaving Canada. Canada has already left the West. That's a great piece, and it was once again written by, excuse me, let me see here, Dr. A.W. Barber, a former director of Asian Studies at the University of Calgary. He's internationally active and has wide-ranging interests. Now, Christine Anderson is going to be in Mirror, Alberta tomorrow for the great big Alberta Day celebration. That's going to be happening at the Whistle Stop Cafe. Christine Anderson is going to be there. Here she is with Neil Oliver just last week.
It's the atmosphere. You're in the chamber. You're moving around in the European Parliament. What is the talk? And what is the mood of your colleagues, those with whom you agree and those with whom you don't?
They're frightened at this point because a lot of them do realize what they're doing is not right. They're not serving in the best interest of the people, and it is no longer government of the people, by the people, for the people. At this point, it's government of the globalitarian misanthropists, for the globalitarian misanthropists, and by the globalitarian misanthropists. That's what we're looking at. And they're beginning to realize that the people will no longer let them get away with it. And they can no longer fool them into thinking, oh, it's all about, we have to save the planet now, and it's climate change, and it's all of this. People no longer believe in that, and I think they're catching on to the fact that it's a gigantic lie.
I hope she's right. I mean, because many of us, like I was saying earlier, many of us sit here in our bubbles, and I always talk about meeting people like you right now, watching this show, meeting people like you and just sitting down and having a coffee with you or a beer or something and talking about the world and what's happened to the world and all of that. And we generally tend to be coming from the same place, right? We've all blue-pilled. Nope, red-pilled. We all know exactly what's really going on. We don't know exactly, how deep it goes, and we don't know the origins of all this. We might think we do, and we've got theories, but we don't. We just do know what's going on right now. Whereas the average person, the average normie, the one I told you the story about earlier, they haven't got a freaking clue. So I wonder if Christine Anderson talks to normies ever, to be able to say something like that. Like, people just don't believe in it anymore. She's talking about climate change there. I wonder how they feel about the LGBTQ. This is Ursula von der Leyen. She's the president of the EU. I played this for you guys on Thursday as Budapest, Hungary was gearing up for this great big pride parade that the prime minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, says, no, you're not having. And the police said they would ban it. But the mayor of Budapest said, no, it's going ahead. It did go ahead. They were bragging about it all weekend on X. But here's Ursula von der Leyen last week.
I want to express my full support and solidarity to the Budapest Pride and to the LGBTIQ plus community. In Europe, marching for your rights is a fundamental freedom. You have the right to love who you want to love and be exactly who you are. Our union is one of equality and non-discrimination. These are our core values enshrined in our treaties. They must be respected at all times in all member states. I call on the Hungarian authorities to allow the Budapest Pride to go ahead without fear of any criminal or administrative sanctions against the organizers or participants. To the LGBTIQ plus community in Hungary and beyond, I will always be your ally. You have every reason to be proud. Europe is stronger and richer because of you. I am on your side, today and every day.
Yeah, okay. So I had this this normie conversation, and part of it was LGBTQ because of something that I'd posted on the Facebook page a couple days ago, and it was like, anybody absolutely tired of this crap, share it. And it was that stupid flag that keeps changing all the time that now includes maps. You know what maps are, right? Maps, minor attracted persons. That the flag now includes them. Pedophiles. And this person said to me, well, a friend of mine was completely and totally offended by what you put up. And so she messaged me, and I couldn't believe it myself. I said, so your friend messaged you that she was offended by something I put on Facebook and that maybe you'd talk to me about it? Well, I just thought that I'd bring it up. Do you even know? Well, I go to those pride parades all the time. This person told me. I said, do you? What are you supporting? Well, gay people. I said, why do they need to have a parade every year? They've already got every right that they've ever asked for. Do you support pornography in schools? Do you support naked men dangling their junk in the faces of children? Is that what you dig that? What are you even talking about? Didn't know. So getting back to Ursula von der Leyen, apparently she's bracing for a non-confidence vote from the EU Commission. Now, this is probably not going to pass, just so you guys are aware. But Romanian MEP, member of the European Parliament, George Peperia, I probably butchered that name, has sparked a political firestorm in Brussels, securing the 72 signatures required to trigger a non-confidence vote against the left Liberal European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Threshold representing 1/10, 720 seats in the European Parliament. That's outrageous. Came primarily from the national conservative groups, the European Conservatives and Reformists, the Patriots, and the Europe of Sovereign Nations. Well, the ESN backed the motion unanimously. The ECR's largest delegation, Giorgia Meloni's Fratelli d'Italia, conspicuously abstained. Interesting. Shockingly, even members of von der Leyen's own European People's Party signed the petition exposing fractures within her political base. The no confidence vote stems from the ongoing fallout of Pfizer-gate, her deleted private communications with Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, tied to a staggering 21.5 billion euros contract for 1.1 billion doses of those vaccines, have fueled accusations of opacity and cronyism. Speaking about cronyism, how about Bonnie Henry? How about Theresa Tam? How about all their big pharma buddies? How about all of those chief medical officers in every single province across this country? How about them all? How about anybody who went along with that BS that we had to put up with for 2 or 3 years during the COVID response? And now we're finding out it was absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. More and more news is coming out every single day about the harms that they've caused with the shots and with the lockdowns, the mental damage, the turbo cancers, all of that stuff, right? But not in Canada. The Order of Canada, the appointees list came out today. You want to see who's on it? Let me show you. There's a lot of names you don't know here. So, oh, look, there's Bonnie Henry. Bonnie Henry has been using her expertise in public health and preventative medicine to safeguard the health of people in Canada and globally for decades. Notably, a provincial health officer, she led BC's response to the... Yeah, we know about that. So she's up for it. And there's another one here. Oh, Theresa Tam. For decades, Theresa Tam has striven... Okay, so you get the point. They're going to be named officers of the Order of Canada. Here's Bonnie Henry and Theresa Tam.
Irritating, and people are more likely to touch their face when they have a mask on, and that can be a way of inoculating yourself. If I'm not sick, it's not effective. It's not something that when I'm out in public, it's going to protect me in any way. So we don't want people wearing it all day long, for example. We cannot rely on a mask because the mask is not what keeps us safe. And masks for long periods of time are not recommended by anybody in any situation.
We're not wearing masks now. Would we be safer right now if we had masks on?
No. You see, these are the things that we have learned.
I've always supported wearing masks. I've never said don't wear them. I've always said wear them where it's appropriate.
I think the public has to know this is one of the worst case scenarios in terms of an infectious disease outbreak, in that their cooperation is sought. If there are people who are non-compliant, there are definitely laws and public health powers that can quarantine people in mandatory settings. It's potential you could track people, put bracelets on their arms, have police and other setups to ensure quarantine is undertaken.
Yeah.
It is better to be preemptive and precautionary and take the heat of people thinking you might be overreactionary, get ahead of the curve, and then think about whether you've overreacted later. But it's such a serious situation that I think decisive early action is the key.
Have they thought about what they did later? Nope. Not in Canada. In the United States, oh yeah, news coming out left, right, and center about all of that. But here, oh no. Nope. You're still a heretic if you speak ill of that concoction. You're still a heretic if you say that the lockdowns were not necessary, that masks don't work. The normies will look at you like you have three heads, even now. And the politicians are still using that on social media. It's incredible. But look at this. Somebody put this together, and I thought it was really interesting. Not that you haven't seen it before, but it's a nice reminder.
Thing kills over 10 million people in the next few decades. It's most likely to be a highly infectious virus.
If we get an airborne pandemic, if we haven't built ahead of time some structures to deal with this, millions of people could be adversely impacted.
But also there will be a surprise outbreak. The next administration, that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with.
pandemic prevention and preparedness is going to end up being, whether the administration likes it or not, a priority, a top priority.
Trump is now president. When he faces his first major epidemic, as his predecessors have, he will likely project his impulsivity, xenophobia, and cavalier attitude towards facts to over 52 million followers.
We may yet again have another pandemic, and it is almost inevitable that we will have another pandemic.
Welcome to Event 201.
Of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic.
A new coronavirus.
Why don't we blow the system up and then say, hey, everyone in the world should get this new vaccine we haven't given to anyone yet?
But it is not too crazy to think that an outbreak of a novel avian virus could occur in China somewhere. We could get the RNA sequence from that and print those vaccines on a patch and self-administer.
Yeah. In Canada, though, oh, no. It's amazing to me how these normies have managed to avoid that stuff, because we see it everywhere. I guess maybe it's like buying a new car, right? Like let's say you buy a new car, whatever it is, F-150, let's just say. And up until the moment you bought that car, you never really noticed all those F-150s out there. But once you get it, they're everywhere. Oh, look, there's one that looks just like mine. Oh my God, there's so many F-150s. I didn't realize. Because now you're seeing it from a different perspective, right? These folks, what's it going to take to make them wake up? Here's a piece of good news. Mark Carney has called a by-election for the Alberta riding of Battle River Crowfoot, where Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is expected to compete to regain his seat in the House of Commons. The election will be on August 18th. So if you live in the Battle River Crowfoot riding, I hope that you go out and vote for the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. That's going to be one of those long ballots, like 200 names on it, because the long ballot committee is proud of themselves for trying to disrupt Canadian elections, and the federal government seems happy to do nothing about it. I'm not sure if Pierre Poilievre is going to be like in the middle of the ballot. Does it go alphabetically? I don't know. So you may have to take a little bit more time when you go to your voting place and go through the list. How do I get to the P's? P. And there might be somebody who actually registers, because these people are sneaky, with a name very, very much like Pierre Poilievre. Maybe it'll be like Peter Poilievre. I'm just saying, that's what these people do. Oh, one last thing before we get to the extension tonight on shadowdavis.com for you all accessors, for you Nighthawks. And tonight it's the real Men in Black. You know, we've talked about predictive programming in the past, right? And how they've created movies and television shows to kind of soften us up and let us know what's coming, or to discredit something that is actually real by making a farce of it on TV. And then there's the Simpsons stuff. I still haven't quite figured that out, but man, they seem strangely accurate, don't they, about certain things? Or maybe we're just reading too much into it, like too much. I don't know. It's a fun question. Toronto had their Pride Parade over the weekend. Olivia Chow, the mayor of Toronto, was, oh my God, what a great Pride weekend. What a wonderful Pride Parade. Who does the great impersonation of Olivia Chow? That big fat comedian. Ben something? He's funny. Anyway, she was bragging about the Pride Parade on the weekend, and it's because the government of Toronto had to bail it out because they didn't have any money, these Pride people, because USAID, right? So where'd the money come from? It came from the city of Toronto to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So here's a part of, this is probably the funniest part of the Pride Parade in Toronto. Watch this. Yeah, so you've got all these trans people and gay people waving the flags around freedom for Iran. I don't know how that's become part of their intersectionality, but it has somehow. I don't think the Iranians care. But let me put this up on the screen here. Just get rid of that, and we'll show you that in a second. But look, homosexual activity in Iran, current status, well, it's illegal, with the punishment being the death penalty. Punishment for homosexuality is currently death for men, unless if there is sex between a mature person and a minor, in which the mature person will be killed while the minor will receive 74 lashes. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe that's why they support gay rights in Iran, because they're trying to normalize that pedophilia. Same-sex marriage in Iran is banned. Censorship of LGBT issues in Iran. Right to change legal gender in Iran. What? They actually fund sex reassignment surgeries in... Really? And gender-affirming care is restricted. Process of undergoing sex reassignment surgery is extensive and arduous and is restricted to those over the age of 18. This doesn't make any sense. Legal recognition of non-binary gender in Iran, not legally recognized. Okay, so maybe the Iranians are becoming progressive. It sure seems that way, even though homosexuality is still punishable by death, unless, of course, you're doing it with a kid. And that kid will also be punished, but just not as severely, 74 lashes. And yeah, apparently you can't change your sex, and it is publicly funded in Iran, but they don't recognize gender non-binary individuals at all. Legally, anyhow. Oh, they only made it legal, this medical transition, in 1987. I wonder how much they got paid for that, to change their beliefs. Isn't that crazy? And one last thing here before we wrap up the show tonight, you guys. And that is this. There's a recent poll done. How would Canadians vote if a federal election were held today? You know the drill. And here it is. The Liberals would now get 43% of the vote, down from 44 during the election. Well, the Conservatives would get 39, down from 41. The NDP is up 1 from 6 to 7, and the Bloc stays static at 6. So apparently we've learned nothing. We got to give them a chance. Remember, the normies don't know what a globalist means. The normies, they just don't understand. They like voting for the colors. They like voting for the guy that makes them feel the best. And that's the hill that we're still climbing. So we got to figure a way. Get to the normies. Should I give you a homework assignment? Okay, there won't be a show tomorrow. It is Canada Day, so taking the day off tomorrow. And I do have a few personal things that I have to deal with. Like, well, I'm not going to go into details about it, but it has to do with my Stonewall request earlier. And then we're going to be back on Wednesday night, and we'll throw in a Friday night show as well. How about that? Friday night show this week. Normally, over the summer, I'm not doing Fridays, but I want to do at least 4 shows a week. And seeing as how there's not going to be one tomorrow, we'll do a Friday show for you guys as well. So this week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Love you all. Appreciate you all. And I will catch you on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. The extension begins in 2 minutes on shadowdavis.com. We'll see you there.